Alrighty, what's up everybody? So we are back again. Yeah. Um yeah, so I have my co-pilot here again, Autumn. And today we are going to be going over chapter 8, or at least starting chapter 8, which is functions. So I have the same program here we had last week, which was just trying to think what we did here. User inputs and then while loops. So we have our while loop, and then we have some inputs here and did some questions and stuff. Um, so there was one typo here that was driving me nuts when I edited my video, and I didn't have time to change it. I was like, whatever. I put, is anyone else doing to answer, and I should have been going to answer. That bugged me so much in my last video, but whatever. I was very distracted, so it is what it is. So yeah. All right. Anyway, for today, let me try to get my book over here. All right. So they have a function here that prints something. So let's do that. Close that. I'm gonna just start using obviously IntelliJ for all these videos, and I'm not gonna create individual files for each video anymore. I don't think so. If, again, I have made a video if you guys want to watch it on how to set up Python in IntelliJ, so you can start with that video if you haven't set it all up, and then you can follow along from there. So with this one, it looks like if you're gonna create a function, you just use def for, I guess, define. So that means defining a function from what I see here. Again, I probably should be reading through all this first before I make my videos, but I haven't had the chance, so I'm just going right off, like just on the fly. So we're going to create a function. I'm just going to call this our function. And then, so it looks like almost like every other thing in Python, where you have the colon ending your one line of code, and then everything that's going to be inside of it is indented underneath it. Just going to go ahead and do what we want. And then this is just going to say hello. All right, so I guess that is a function. So it's a very simple function. It's a function that just prints hello. And then if we wanted to use that function, we would just go our function below, and that's going to call the function. So the way functions work is first you have to define your function, which we did up here by using def. So you define your function first, and then you have to create a name for your function. So whatever you want your name to be, this can be anything. And then and then after that you have your parentheses here. We're going to get into arguments and parameters further on, but just know that even if your function has no parameters or takes no arguments, you need those parentheses there. And then below it, you just do whatever you want your function to do. So I'll just go ahead and run this, and you can see that it prints hello. So let's say that somewhere in you created a program, and during that program, it's going to basically print hello multiple times in different areas. You could create this function here and use that call every time you wanted it to print hello, and that way you wouldn't have to write print hello every single time. Which again, this is kind of a sample that makes you think like, well, what's the point? It's not that much more code. But think about having a function that does a whole bunch of stuff, because they're going to get more complicated later on. They have something else going on here where, remember I was saying a function can take in arguments or parameters. So we are going to add a parameter to this function. Okay, so we can add a parameter to this function, and that parameters, we will just call it person's name. All right, and then when we call our function, we put in what we want we put in basically a person's name in this case. So you'd have to, when you call your function, if it needs a parameter, you have to give it that parameter. So in this case, we're going to give it a string called Mr. Porkchop. And then if we run this one, whoops, hold on one second. I do need to add something because my print statement has not changed. So I will need to change my print statement. It is still going to say hello, but we are also going to have it print the name. So we'll have person's name dot title, because title will just capitalize the first letter if it's not capitalized already. So I did capitalize mine, but let's just say for argument's sake that I didn't. Let's say for some reason I decided to lowercase that. Now if I run this, it's going to say, hello, Mr. Porkchop. So you can pass in whichever name. You can use this function over and over again throughout your code to say hello to multiple different people without having to actually change your print statement. All you got to do is put the name in there. You can also have multiple parameters inside of this. So if you wanted to do, you know, person's name, and you can do age, and then let's say we have our hello person's name already. We could do something like you are all right, so something like that. And then when we go to use our function again, we have to put in two different parameters now. And we'll use 21 for age. And then if I run this one this time, we get, hello, Mr. Porkchop. You're, I always do that. Keep making weird mistakes like that. You are 21 years old. So there we go. So again, you can use multiple parameters if you want, and then you just provide those parameters when you call your function, and then they will be implemented into whatever you tell it to do. What's up? We are gonna pick up where we left off with my last recording. So we have our function definition up here of our function, and it has two parameters, person's name and age. One thing I do want to clarify now that I've actually had time to read through this chapter, and I'm starting again. When you define your function, these are going to be called parameters, and then apparently when you call your function, you are giving it arguments. So these arguments are basically what is going to be used here in your parameters. So I guess just understand the difference now between the two. When you call your function, you're passing arguments, and when you define your function, you are giving it parameters. So I just want to clarify that real quick. I wasn't really too, I didn't really understand that when I made my first recording. But yeah, so we are going to go ahead and continue on. It goes through a couple different ways that you can define the arguments that you're going to pass to your function. So you can see here, basically, if by default, if you want to just kind of do it, this is the way that I defaulted to, because this is the way I'm used to doing it, and this is, you know, what I've seen pretty much in all my other coding, which is where you just ensure that the arguments that you're passing are in the same order as your parameters. So if I put 21 first and then put Mr. Porkchop second, then it's going to associate 21 with the person's name and Mr. Porkchop with the age, and you don't want that. So you do want to make sure that your arguments are lined up the same as your parameters. They also said that, like, you can actually, if you wanted to, you can just straight up put in, you know, person's name, and then you can have it equal Mr. Porkchop. So if you wanted to define your arguments like that, you can, where there's like a name value pair, and then you can't mess it up. And then if you do that, I believe if you do it that way, then it no longer matters what order you put it in, because it knows exactly what parameter you are you're setting with that argument. But I don't know exactly why you would want to do that. It kind of just says like you can do it this way if you want. The other thing we're going to go through is setting up default values. So you could do a default value in your definition where let's say our age by default is 21, and then you could leave this function or when you call the function, if this already has a value, then you don't actually need to provide an argument for that parameter. If you don't provide an argument for that parameter, it'll use the default value. However, if you do provide a different value as an argument, then it will use this value instead of the default. So just understand the ch, it uses 30, and then if I erase this and run it again, you'll see it uses 21 by default. So that's just setting a default value. It goes over a few different things as far as trying to prevent errors when it comes to arguments. But it's again just kind of a common sense thing. Make sure that you have all the arguments you need and that they're in the correct order. And when it comes to default values, you want to make sure that if you have multiple parameters and only some of them are defaults, or only some of them have default values, then you want to put the ones that have default values at the end. So do any parameters up front first that are not going to have default values, and then do anything that's going to have a default value at the end. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about returning a value through a function. So this next example that we're going to do here is going to be a function basically that's going to create a person's name. So I'm just going to call this create name. And then the parameters that this is going to have is going to be our first name and last name, which I'm just going to call it first and last. I don't feel like writing everything out. And then below that, we are going to have a dictionary. So we'll have a dictionary, and this dictionary, the book just calls it person. So I'm just going to kind of copy what they have. Person, and that person is going to have a first name. So basically their first name is going to equal first, and then their last name is going to equal last. And then right below that, we type the keyword return and then person. So what this is going to do is it is a function that when we call it, we are going to provide two arguments, a first name and a last name. So you have your first and your last name provided as arguments, and then it is going to create a dictionary with keys, first name and last name, which values are going to hold whatever you give it. So if I ran this, when I call my function, all right, so I forgot to actually put my, I forgot to put these inside of parentheses. So now it should work. Oh, okay, my bad. So it works fine. So what the issue is, I forgot to actually print it. That's why we're not seeing anything. So if I wanted to print something, I would have to, basically what this is doing is it's creating a dictionary. So if I actually want to print the dictionary that I created, then I need to basically set it up. So let's just create a variable called me. because that's what this person is. This person is me, and then we'll print me. That way you can see what this function is actually doing. But this function is building a dictionary that you see right here. So it built a dictionary that says first name, pork chop, last name, or yeah, first name is pork, last name is chop. And then when I called the function, I had to create my variable that was going to be equal to what my function creates. So this function is creating a dictionary called person inside of my function, but then you can call that dictionary whatever you want when you call the function. So yeah, sorry if that was a little confusing. I confused myself there a little bit. All right, so this is kind of a cool one. So we can have this, which has a definition for our function that's going to say, hello everyone. And we will have one parameter called names. And then below that, we are going to do a for loop. And it's going to say for name in names. We're just going to have it print All right, so with that, we should have no problem. It should go ahead and this function, if you pass this function a list of names, then it'll print out a message basically saying hello to each person in that list. So we will go ahead and do, I'll just do people's names. Yeah, maybe I'll just, so we'll go ahead and just do list of names. All right, so you have our list of names. Some of them I left capitals, some of I didn't. And then after that, we can just go ahead and use our function and give it a list of names. So now when we run this, we should have it take this list of names and print out a message to everyone saying hello. So it says hello Peter, hello John, Paul, and Jim. There you go. So it's pretty nice to actually use these functions. These functions you could use, again, anywhere in your code. So if you didn't want to have to print out multiple print statements for each one of these in a list, you can have a function that does it for you. And again, functions, they're going to be more useful as you go through programming. You'll see, like right now, we're doing very simple tasks with these functions. And it does have an example here, again, where if you wanted to do a list, but you don't want it to modify the original list, let's say that you wanted to, which we didn't even really modify this list, but let's say that your function does something where it takes, where it modifies the list. You can prevent the original list from being modified if you use a copy of it, again, by doing just this. It's just splicing the list. So if your function modifies the list, but you don't want the original list to be modified, then just make sure that you're using a copy of it, or that you're passing it a copy of the list, not the actual original list. Yeah, I'm not going to go into all the different examples it does on that. I'm just going to explain it to you guys and so that you understand. All right, now this is something that is pretty cool that I just learned in this, and that is passing arbitrary number of arguments. So when you define your parameters, there's a way to set a parameter up that will basically accept multiple arguments for that parameter, and it doesn't really, you don't have to know ahead of time how many it's going to be. So the example they do here is great, and I'm just going to copy it because I can't think of a better one. But they do pizza toppings. So they're going to have like make a pizza, and then you do this little asterisk here. And that asterisk basically says that obviously you don't know how many toppings are going to be on this pizza. So this will create a tuple, and it'll hold all the arguments in that tuple, and so you can make multiple pizzas with different toppings. And then we're just going to go ahead and print our toppings so we can see what happens. And then when you call your function, you can put in as many toppings as you want. So maybe the first pizza just has pepperoni, and then the second pizza is going to have, whoa. And then our second pizza is going to have pepperoni, and we'll do some other stuff too. So it's going to have peppers and maybe do cheese, mushrooms, why not? All right, so we have two different pizzas, and one only has one topping, the other one has a bunch of different toppings, and if we click this, it should print both of them. So you can see it takes in one or multiple, doesn't really matter. That's what this asterisk is for. And then if you do a double asterisk, then it creates a dictionary. So one, it's a tuple, and then two gives you dictionaries. And the dictionary is going to be key value pairs. So I would have to create actual pairs for this, and then that should build us a dictionary. Yeah, so that builds the dictionary with our key being topping 1 and then pepperoni, and of course we could do as many toppings as we wanted and keep this going. So that's what the double asterisk is. All right, so the next thing we want to talk about is storing your functions in models. So one of the cool things you can do is you can create, and I've done this in other projects, is you can create a separate file and you can put all your functions inside of that file. So let's say that we have this one. I'm going to keep this a tuple just because it's a little easier to work with. But let's say we have this function here. I'm just going to copy that. We're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new file. And this will be, just call this one functions. I'm going to paste this function into here. And then if we go back to our main, so our function now lives inside of this file, which is still in the same directory as our main file. And over here, we can do just an import statement, import functions, right? And then once we have that imported, we can call any function in that file. So in our case, we want to call make, what did I call it? Make pizza? Yeah. So then we can call make pizza and then do the same exact thing. And then if we run our main, oh, okay, I called it wrong. So that's my bad. So one of the things you need to do, even if you import it, what you want to do is you want to actually go functions and then dot. So you got to have the actual file name that you're importing and then dot pizza. And then it'll give you what you want. So that creates your tuple with the one pepperoni topping. And that's how you basically import your functions. So if you don't want really cluttered main file, if you can create a bunch of functions in a separate file, you can import that file into your main file, and then you can just use these. You can just use like the function dot property and to get the different functions that you want. So if we had multiple functions inside this function file, you could do functions dot and then type in whatever function you wanted to use, and you could use it inside this main file. It also shows here how to basically import specific functions. So if you didn't want to just do import functions, the whole file, what you can do is you can do you can go from functions and then go import make pizza. So you can do that way too. And then I believe if you do it that way, you should be able to just use the function without that dot. So if you do it like this, like from functions import make pizza, it should, yeah, it'll let you run it without that whole functions dot setup. So you can do it this way too if you don't want to have to write function and then do dot make pizza. And again, you can import as many functions as you want this way by just doing comma and the next function. So whatever you wanted to do, if you had another function here, you could just keep going and you could import as many functions as you want from that file. The other cool thing that you can do is, like, let's say you have a bunch of functions in here, but then you made some variables that match the function names, or there's some conflict there. Then you can give your functions aliases when you import them. So in this one, instead of doing like from functions import make pizza, you can do that, and then at the end you can do as MP, which is what they have in the book here. Just stands abbreviation for make pizza, and you can do it like that instead. And then when you call it, you just have to do MP instead of make pizza, and it'll do the same exact thing. And that way you can just adjust the namings conventions to match what you need. You can also do that with where's that other one I just saw here? So you can do the same thing with the actual file name too. So let's say you wanted to go back to just import functions. You can do import functions as, just F. And then if you wanted to do this, then you would just do F dot make pizza, and you could run it like that. Same exact thing. So that's just how you kind of create aliases for either the file name or the function names. And if you want to just import all the functions from a file without having to actually type them all out, then you can do from functions import and then just do the asterisks. So that'll import all the functions from that file. And that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot more to go over. I did keep this a little short. I didn't really go over as many of the examples as I usually do, but I think I got the main meat and potatoes of this chapter into this video. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys learned some important things about functions and how they work and how you can use them. Let me know in the comments if you guys enjoyed this or what you want to see next. I'm going to continue going through this this book. The next chapter is chapter 9, which is classes. So hopefully you guys will be seeing that within a week or so. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video and you made it to the end, I appreciate it. Please subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you all next week.